The Syria discussion continues. Now we have heard from Secretary of State John Kerry that he is giving Bashar al-Assad 1 week. It is a second red line of sorts, at least as it's being described by some, before these military strikes, these airstrikes, which are now being characterized by, I don't know if we should call them McCarry or Kerrane or what, but John McCain and John Kerry, who seem to be they seem to be on the same page, for lack of a better term. Incredibly small would be the size and characterization of these airstrikes, which the majority of the American people are against. The majority of the American people also believing that these airstrikes would lead to a bigger ground incursion. And Lewis, I can't say I blame anybody, because that is a perfectly reasonable and rational position to take, that it is not going to be as simple as dropping a few bombs.
It's never that simple, and you immediately change foreign relations, and not just with Syria. It could be with any number of countries, and the repercussions could be huge.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, in an interview with Charlie Rose, which will air in its entirety tonight, denied involvement in the chemical weapons attacks on the Syrian people, and said that if the United States has evidence, Washington should produce it. He also kind of hinted at, if there is this military strike by the U.S., that everything is on the table, even hinting at 9/11, referencing it during the interview. Is John Kerry, in a sense, the new Colin Powell? I know that it isn't really fair to analyze the merits of this military incursion based on the specifics of what happened with Iraq. However, I think it is perfectly reasonable to understand what happened with Iraq and with intelligence and with the case that Colin Powell made at the time, and use that to think about the case that is now being made by John Kerry. Lewis, how can we separate, right? Because we don't want to be fighting the Iraq war now through the lens of this specific Syria incident. But at the same time, it is only reasonable to think of past intelligence presentations that have been made.
Yeah, but it's good that those have been made, and that we have something to compare this to, and that we have skepticism and scrutiny and a lot of Americans who want to have nothing to do with it. I don't know what's going to happen, but I hope that this ends up being just a small, contained thing, because it has the potential to get completely out of control.
Yeah, so you're already, as many people, just assuming it is going to happen, and let's try to keep it as small as possible, because that does seem to be the direction that it is going, even though it seems like President Obama does not have Congress behind him, so it's still kind of a question mark. Let's think about what Lewis said, right? Let's contextualize this and see where is this going to get us, because let's look at our history. At one point, we were helping Osama bin Laden fight the Russians in Afghanistan. At one point, we helped Saddam Hussein fight Iran. Where are we with those people that we now helped? I think you already know. I think we've been talking about it for the last 5 years on this program, or even longer. Where are we going to get with this strike in Syria? Now we have more and more evidence pointing to the fact that not only does Assad's regime have chemical weapons, but so do at least a couple of the rebel groups, which, by the way, are so fragmented that we don't even know who would take control if the Assad regime were to go down. What exactly will the airstrike do, Lewis? Certainly the possibility of collateral damage. Young children and the elderly will, as always, be disproportionately the victims. But what is really going to happen, and is it going to be better for the people on the ground, putting aside the moral implications, the legal status of a strike like this without UN Security Council approval, putting all of that aside, in the best case where the Assad regime goes down, is it a better situation a year from now in Syria?
You know what? I think that's part of this. I think we want to have influence over who ends up in power, because that's going to be, let's face it, important. We don't want radicals taking power. And this may just be the first step into a presence there, because it starts with this, and then we'll say, oh, well, something went wrong. We discovered this there during our flyovers. We need to send in some troops here. And then it just blows up.